Good afternoon, everyone. Uh, Thank you so much for inviting me here. Like, this is my first time to be here, and I feel welcome by the warmth of all of you brothers and sisters here. And thank you so much for making this first time here, a very memorable one. So much.
You can stay for as long as you like.
Now, the first now when I first came here, it was supposed to be like a visit, going around different churches, see all the different congregations. I did not expect to be approached about telling my life story yet. So uh I'm going to like apologize beforehand if may sometimes run off like run off topic sometimes, but I'll try to stay focused here as I can, and maybe throw in like a major lesson that I've learned through my life. Now, back in 2018, I was finishing up on my college course at the time, which was a Bachelor of Arts in History in Mountain View College. And so when as I was finishing up, it was the time for on the job training OJTs. It's this thing where uh, college students will have some real world experience to prepare them for their future careers. I was put a in the school museum because and my job at the time was mostly to keep the museum clean every once in a while, organize office work, and occasionally, when there is one random stranger who decides to check out the museum, I have to show them around the different exhibits. This right here, it's a spear from one of our indigenous tribes. This over here is a Bible where the students of Mountain View College, the faculty, and the staff all wrote one page at a time. And this right here is a wall full of the timeline moments of Mountain View College. So that was basically my job. And most of the time it mostly didn't amount to anything because most of the time the students are either too busy or don't really care about what goes on in the museum. However, e- even though there would there almost no one comes every day and most people would just pass by the museum to go relieve themselves in the restroom, uh, I always appreciate the very few people who actually come to the museum to check out MVC's history, because it's something that we really need to remember talaga, this sense of where we came from, where we're going. It's what it's what I've learned so much as a historian, even though the program's gone now. But that but those very few years that the program existed, I've managed to learn a lot, not just about the history of the school or the history of wherever place that you may mention, but even a history of myself. Ba? I should say. Um, I graduated when I was 20, I'd say, or what, or was yeah, it was 20 because they moved it to me. Anyway, that's the museum part is just an intro. What happened during that time is, I think, after the OJT training was done, I think there was some like student or something that must have been like carrying some nasty bug or disease somewhere, which at the time I didn't notice. of course I didn't notice it until I started uh cough started coughing and sneezing all the time, and so I was rushed to hospital, you know. uh, and then at first, like, the doctors couldn't were dismissive of what was going on. They think it was, oh, it's just a routine cough and cold thing, he'll be fine. And and then a month later I was rehospitalized again, because this time I got some sort of UTI or diarrhea. And and once again, the doctors, they didn't think much of it. And then it happened again in hospitals. So it was like a very, like, painful experience for me, because you have to keep going to hospital, you know, thinking everything is fine, but then it keeps happening and happening. So there must be something wrong, something something that must have been lingering in my body at the time. And so on the first few, like, weeks, I suppose, of the recovery were, like, full of panic on my end. Like, I had a high fever. All of a sudden I started having, like, a panic attack, which I've never had ever in my life. And so it was a pretty surprising experience for me, and very scary, because I never, because as much as I have been sick, I've never experienced something that hit that hard before. So so, so yes, back to the hospitalizations. My I saw several doctors, and they all had differing uh diagnoses for what I was going through. Some of them said it was, just your diar regular diarrhea, like I've eaten something, or there was like an amoeba. Other doctors thought it was something to do with the water. And then there was one doctor who found out it was tuberculosis, which turned out to be correct. But then it wasn't just any tuberculosis that, you had the coughing and everything. It's not that. It's a gas. As it turns out, you can get tuberculosis in your small intestine, and it would eat all of the organs and the tissues in there. Something. So it was pretty bad. Not used to the air here. Anyway, so so I got diagnosed for tuberculosis, and so I was given like 6 months full of, like, TB medications. Mm, That's not that's not TB, by the way.
You like us to put over the electric fan?
Oh, oh no, oh no, don't no need. That probably will, and it's already pointed away. Anyway, gone gone off track. Now, what happened was, I had to take it for like 6 to 12 months, like, nonstop. So so I had so I had to take that, like, nonstop. Like, I cannot just skip one day, otherwise it will come back with a vengeance. And so, like, I remember, like, there was one time where we had to go, like, on a trip or something, and then I ran out of meds once again. Like, I panicked about it, and then my parents were like, it's okay, it's okay. No, like, you can just hold off for, like, what, just once. You can just take them. like you can just take them tomorrow, but I wasn't having that. And so, because like I remember what the doctor said, it's like, no, you have to take it like every single day, like you must not skip at least one, otherwise it will no develop like drug resistance. And so it's like it's one of those like few moments throughout my sickness where I was like already worrying about myself. Like I actually fell into a depression spiral from it. Like I've like kept getting hospitalized, kept getting checkups, getting more medicine, try trying to stay healthy as much as I can, not being able to eat that much. Sometimes the side effects would show like your like pee or your feces will be colored different or whatever. And so like those sorts of episodes were for me were truly some of the scariest in my life, because I never thought that my body would be able to break down this much. And like I actually thought that I might die like a couple of moments. Like there were some moments like that. But then like my parents, my family, their my friends were able to get get me through this. It's like, no, this is not the end. There must be like a purpose for you, like why you were sick or something. And and there and there must have been a time where I stopped the med. By the time it was over, I stopped my medications and all and started living a healthy life. But apparently, it wasn't over at all. Like because at the time I was trying to apply to law school in UP Diliman 20 like as far back as 2017. And so during and so we were supposed to go there, but then as mentioned before, I got sick for like an entire year. And even after the tuberculosis was gone, there came a new problem. There was a fistula, which the doctor told me is a tube bit that has developed between my colon and my bladder. And the first time that it actually happened was when I got hospitalized again for UTI. Like they found traces of E. coli in my urine from tests, but then the doctors again weren't too sure of what was going on. In fact, I had to see a urinalysis who had had to tell me, no, this is not like something serious. Something you're just probably having UTI or dirty water. So eat right and do, eat right, drink the right fluids, and go to bed at this time and do all of these things so that you can get better. Of course, I heeded this advice, but then it came back the next month, and at this point, like the hospital recommended, it's too costly to have uh it's too costly to have you keep coming to the hospital all the time, because MBC is like what 15 kilometers from Valencia, and I can't keep making the journey there. So what they had to do is bring the hospitalization to me. Like I had a a needle injected here, and it's supposed to be kept there for like a month while they bring up like antibiotics, and then I'm connected at home. Like they had to set up a place for the dextrose to be put, as well as like the antibiotics, and we also had to follow a very strict schedule. It must be like at this time you inject a new antibiotic and all these things, which added even more stress. Actually, like you'd think that hospitals would be stressful, but it turns out when you're at home without many doctors or nurses that just stay by your side, it becomes harder to do anything. Eventually, the doctors in Valencia ran out of like ideas, and so one of them suggested that I go to Davao Doc because there must be like an infectious disease specialist that can tell me what's going on. And so we went, and once I got there, like they began they did the routine test. Like I had like a colonoscopy. There was also a prostate exam as well. There was also an endoscopy. All of these different tests to see what was going on, and not a single one of them could figure out that there was a connection between my colon and my bladder. Not one. Not even the colonoscopy people could see it. It as it turns out, these like little fistulas can be quite small, sometimes microscopic, so they can be invisible to the naked. They can be invisible to cameras sometimes. And so when we went back to MVC, like I was being in one restroom on the way, like we stopped at somewhere, and then what came out was like brown, out of nowhere, and it also had chunks. So that particularly was very alarming. And so what happened was it kept going for the next week, and so we had to send like these pictures back to Davao Doc, and we were rescheduled for another week to see what was going on. So no, eventually Davao Doc referred us to the MSF because they probably have some doctors there specializing in those areas. And so we went there to the MSF. The doctor there said that this is a concerning like development, because if we do not find what this reason for the brown pee is for, I might go into septic shock, because apparently this if this keeps going, the infectious disease will go up to my kidneys and do even more damage there. And eventually he said he went on to say that this may take ano like this may take some surgery or something like that, because eventually he did find out that there was a fistula in there after all. And so they recommended like I get surgery. But then with all of these like hospitals in Davao, like I think some of you who have gotten sick know that this can go to expensive amounts just to get well. Like get into like a private room or something. Like the cheapest way to do that, to actually get a room, is to be in like a public ward, and like my parents wouldn't have that, given how uh given my condition at the time. And so, and when it looked like we would run out of a place, uh a friend of my mother's who works at SPMC like suddenly called out of nowhere. It's like she said that SPMC has a place. You will be sharing a room. However, at least you're not sleeping in like the emergency room where there are like hundreds of other sick people. And so we decided to go there. Like, and then once there, we got settled into the room, and then we were given like we were told by the doctor or the surgeon that I was going to have like a surgery. Like it was supposed to be like a, was it laparoscopy, where they'll just insert a tube on my body and then just do the surgery through a camera. Like they'll just do that. do it that way. And so it's like, okay, I agree. We'll just do that. And so like before the surgery, we like prayed for many days, like by my bedside, like they like we had to endure like like several sleepless nights of ano, like instant prayer. Sometimes the room would get too hot and it would be unbearable, pero sige na lang. It must it must endure for before we can do the surgery. And then the day and then it happened. Like it was already the the day of my surgery. For the first time ever throughout my sick experience, I never felt like I was going to fall into a panic attack. I never had needed my anxiety meds. I never needed that because it was already happening. Like I was going to get my intestines fixed. Well, and so it happened. They went for my surgery. They gave me anesthesia, and then operated on me for 6 hours. At least that's what I was told. So a- after that, like I remember I remember this very well. Like I was put into a like a hold up room or something. Like there were like other surgery patients that were recovering, and I remember like gasping for air immediately. Like the first time I was like, oh, like like another like sense of panic fell into me. Where am I? And like how am I alive? How am I doing? And so I tried to you know like grasp for my breath, and then all of the nurses suddenly noticed me. It's like stop, stop, stop. Like you're like don't like stay calm, stay calm. I mean, and and then once I was able to calm down, like I noticed that the surgery had been no, like I noticed that the surgery had been successful, but it wasn't. You, it turned out that it wasn't just like a laparoscopy that I had to go through. They had to cut me open, like a gash from my navel going down, because they found in the operation that the tuberculosis that was in my intestine did so much damage to my intestine that they had to take out a 1 foot section, like this much small intestine. And so they had to get rid of it, and they had to stitch it back together, like the remaining parts, so that it would heal. And that process would take 4 or 5 days before I could actually eat or drink. So I wasn't allowed to do that. So they got me back into my bed, like injected me a big bag full of like proteins and chemicals. And so like for all that time, it was very agonizing. I wasn't able, like I could feel my lips like dry and beginning to fall off. I could feel like my body being weak, like in that bed. and I was like looking to the Lord and saying, when will this end? Huh? Not only that, I had to get like assistants to help me if I wanted to go to the toilet, because all of that. And not only that, there was also like a bag here that was to bring out the like that was supposed to bring out the bad stuff as well, like blood or like residual tissue. And you know that was all I went through. However, despite all of the difficulties that I suffered during my surgical operation, all of that, I felt relaxed for the very first time. Because if you think about it, God was able to like find me a place, like like he knew my situation. He knew that I had to get this surgery done as soon as possible, or else I would die. And so it's like he really does like answer in unexpected ways. Like like there were moments I wish he could have healed. He would have found the means to heal me much earlier. But we all know that God isn't like that. Like sometimes whenever God comes along to give you all the blessings that you hope for, it sometimes won't be at the time that you want. You will to have to go through some grueling waiting. So like through all of through all of these periods, like wait. You have to have patience. Like, you cannot just like hope that this blessing that has to come right away. So it was a really tough lesson, a year-long lesson. But how however, when it finally came time for me to get better, he found the right doctor. He found us a place. He found us like an operating window that was as close to our admission as possible. Like as soon as we got into the hospital, then we would be going through the surgery. And to cap it all off, we didn't have to pay a lot for these hospital services. As it turns out, as it like we didn't like like even though our PhilHealth wasn't able to be covered, like wasn't able to cover all the operation costs and all the admission costs, we we eventually got a donation from our family friends. Okay, like I remember there was like a pastor who came over to visit me, and he said, "We have been praying for you for a year. Uh, like we've been praying for you that you can get better, that you are able to come back eventually healthier and stronger, so that you can fulfill whichever purpose God has for you in life." And which is probably, ano, like like I feel very appreciative talaga of the people who pray for me, because sometimes there many of those people aren't people that I expected would actually pray for me, because most of the time I saw myself as you know just a per just a one person, just an acquaintance. Like you're like I just pass through, meet people along the way, and then move on, like dust in the wind. uh, so so this was the first time that I really felt that there were actually people who did care, like to whoever is out there who has prayed for me in this time. Some of them might, like a few of them might be here or in other churches here. like like I I'll never forget their no talaga. like I'll never forget their prayers. and and so once the operation was done and we were ready to leave, there was a call, like happened, that came from came from my mom. Like it was addressed to my mom, so mom picked it up. Apparently, the person at the other end of the line was a faculty member of uh, Manila Adventist College, and he teaches there, and so he's told my mother, uh, your son Gordy, we've heard that he's trying to get into law like 2 years for the past 2 years. Well, I'm happy to say that starting from 2019, we are opening a law school, Manila Adventist. No Sabbath classes,
Wow.
no night classes and such. No, and no, it won't be like eye-wateringly expensive to do. And not only that, there will be other like Adventists who will be coming from all over the country who, and there will be like this and you will form the first pioneering batch. I mean, it's like wow, praise God, talaga. Like that that is perhaps the biggest like lesson. It's what God does in His time, like His blessings come in His time. We may never understand what is going on. We may never understand why God chooses to delay our dreams going forward. And we may sometimes never understand why this waiting time will sometimes include periods of suffering or helplessness. Uh, However, even among these difficult times, it it's always like you must always reassure yourself, like always strengthen your faith, always keep praying, keep be trusting in His plans. Like yep, like perhaps that's the biggest lesson I can say. You must trust Him in whatever He does. Many of us, we cannot see the future. Talaga. We may not, and some, and that really scares us. That because all while we may see our past, learn from our mistakes, do all and enjoy the present, we can never see the future. Otherwise, we would have already prepared for it, diba? So, and even with which is why we must always fix our eyes on God. Always trust Him. Always rest in His word. Rest in His plans. Because while we cannot see the future that comes ahead of us, while we cannot see the incoming pain or ano, pain and suffering, while we cannot see, all of what will be happening between now and next week or next year or the years after that, it is God who can see all of that. We only have like as our perspective on life, on things, is quite small and insignificant compared to what God can see, which which is why we must all trust Him. It he knows already what's ahead. He knows how we can get there, and ultimately He knows that we will overcome. So that's my testimony for this afternoon. Happy Sabbath.